Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a question that really gets to the heart of who we are as people and as believers. And it's this: why do we all feel this deep, restless ache inside of us to belong and to feel like our lives actually matter? We're going to explore what's driving that feeling and, most importantly, where we can find true, lasting rest.
So here's the path we're going to take together. First, we'll pinpoint our two most basic human needs. Then we're going to look at something called the frustration gap. It's what so often leaves us feeling discontented. We'll see how that gap can lead us straight into a trap, something the Bible calls dead works. And then we get to the good part. We'll uncover the beautiful solution found in the freedom of God's grace and what it really means to serve the living God.
Let's just start right here with this question. Maybe you recognize the feeling from that famous Tracy Chapman song, "I had a feeling I belonged, I had a feeling I could be someone." Wow. That line just perfectly captures this universal human longing, doesn't it? It's an ache for both belonging and significance. And that feeling is at the very heart of what we're exploring today. Now, that longing, that ache, it points us directly to our first big idea. We're talking about two foundational needs that are wired into us. And it's so important we get this. These aren't just casual wants or nice-to-haves. No, these are deep, fundamental needs. So, what are they? Well, first, there's security. This is the need to be loved, to be accepted, to know deep in our bones that we belong somewhere. And then second, there's significance. This is the need to have a purpose, to be respected, to feel like our life has meaning and it counts for something. Every single one of us needs both of these to be psychologically, and I would argue, spiritually healthy.
What's so fascinating is how this lines up with what secular psychology has discovered. You've probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He figured out that, of course, our physical needs, food, water, shelter, they form the foundation. But look what comes right after that. It's security, love and belonging, and then right on its heels, significance, purpose, and self-esteem. You see, even this secular model points to a spiritual reality. God created us with these deep relational and purposeful needs that go way beyond just surviving.
But, and here's where the problem really starts for so many of us. When those deep needs for security and significance go unmet, it creates what we can call a frustration gap inside us. And this gap becomes this powerful engine that just drives our discontent. Let's take a look at how this actually works in our mind. Believe it or not, Harvard University actually studied this. They came up with something called the frustration index. And they defined it as this gap, this internal distance between the person you see yourself as right now and the person you believe you should be by this point in your life. It's a powerful and often subconscious measurement that drives so many of our feelings of inadequacy. So you could almost think of it like a simple math problem. You take this image you have in your head of who you should be, maybe it's based on your friends, your family's expectations, or your own ambitions, and then you subtract the image of who you think you actually are today. And that difference, well, that equals your level of frustration.
Let's make this really practical. Imagine, on a scale of 1 to 100, you feel like you should be at an 85 to feel successful and okay about yourself. But when you take an honest look at your life, you feel like you're only at a 55. Well, that means you're walking around carrying this heavy burden of 30 units of frustration. It's this constant, nagging feeling that you're falling short.
So what do we do with all that frustration? What's our natural human response? We try to fix it ourselves, right? We start striving and performing and achieving. We try to close that gap on our own to earn our security and significance. And this is where our faith comes in, because the Bible has a really powerful name for all this human effort to try and gain God's acceptance. It calls it dead works.
This iceberg analogy is a brilliant picture of why we fall into this trap. Our mind is like an iceberg. Consciously, that top 10% that's above the water, we might say, oh yes, I believe in God's grace. I'm saved by grace. But down in the subconscious, that huge 90% hidden below the surface, that's what we truly live by. And if our life is one of constant striving and trying to prove ourselves, it reveals that deep down, we don't really believe Christ's work on the cross was enough.
And that brings us to the glorious, freeing solution of the gospel. See, the answer to this exhausting cycle of performance isn't to just try harder. No, it's to stop trying and to receive the freedom of grace. This is the only thing that has the power to cleanse our conscience and finally set us free. And this brings us right to this powerful, central verse from the book of Hebrews. Just listen to the promise here. The writer is asking this rhetorical question. He's saying,
If the old system of sacrifices had some temporary power, then how much more shall the blood of Christ cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? Do you see? This isn't about what we do, it's about what Christ has already done. This is the rock-solid foundation of our true acceptance.
So let's just break that down for a second. What does the blood of Christ actually accomplish? First, our conscience is cleansed. Our mind can finally be at rest knowing that God is completely satisfied with Jesus' sacrifice on our behalf. Second, we are freed from these dead works. I mean, think about it. Working hard to pay for something that's already been paid for in full, that's just wasted work. It's dead. And third, we're cleansed for a purpose, so that we can serve the living God.
And this is the beautiful result. This is what a life begins to look like when it's free from that constant, nagging need to perform and prove ourselves. It's a fundamental shift from just striving to survive to actually thriving in Christ.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. We can either live a life that's driven by a noisy, guilty conscience, one that's always pushing us, do more, be better, to feel worthy, or we can live a life that is led by the living God, where our hearts are finally quiet enough to actually hear His voice and follow where He's leading.
This is the practical freedom of grace in our everyday lives. When you know, deep down in your soul, that your acceptance with God is not based on your performance, it creates this incredible spiritual safety net underneath you. You're actually free to try new things for Him, to take risks for His kingdom, and get this, you're even free to fail because you know that God's love for you in Christ is secure. It will never change. You get to serve Him out of love, not out of fear.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this one question to carry with you. I really encourage you to honestly ask yourself this. In your daily life, in your job, in your family, in your ministry, are you working for acceptance? Are you still on that treadmill trying to earn your worth and close that frustration gap? Or are you learning to live and work from a place of acceptance, resting completely in the finished work of Jesus Christ? The difference between those two is the difference between a life of striving and a life of true freedom.